Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Chiravanachari. Yamuna Chiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana. Yamuna Chiravanachari. Yamuna Chiravanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna. Jaya Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Jaya Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Jaya Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Vishnupada Paramahamsa Statara Sri Srimad Bhagavatam Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Premseka host Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai 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 Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Shri Ganga Mai Ki Jai Shri Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Shri Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Tulsi Maharani Ki Jai Shri Kartik Vrata Ki Jai Shri Krishna Saradiya Rasayatra Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai. Om Jnanatinamandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Devi Krishna Das Goswami. So everybody, welcome. We're gathered all here together for the beginning of the most auspicious month of the year, which is Kartik, the month of Lord Damodara. Haribo, Haribo, also known as in Vrindavan as Radharani's month. So Radhe Radhe. This is a very special month for all of the Vaishnavas worldwide, and I would say particularly for everyone who, due to unfortunate circumstances this year, is not able to attend the wonderful celebrations in Sri Vrindavan Dham, go on Braj Mandal Parigram or visit Govardhan during Govardhan Puja, because this is a month where so many festivals are going on and so many special occasions that we will honor coming up, including the disappearance of our beloved founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and the appearance of Radha Kund, and of course Govardhan Puja, Diwali, and today actually it is Kartik, and also it's the day of the Sharat season where Krishna performed his rasa dance with the gopis. And I'm going to read a little just from the Krishna book about that before we talk about Kartik proper and the pastimes of Lord Damodar, because I know that maybe a few of you might not know, I don't really know it, but maybe a little, the pastimes of Lord Damodar and what went on, what transpired there in that wonderful pastime. So I'm going to just talk about that a little bit after we hear a little bit about the rasa dance, which I was actually just hearing Prabhupada the other day say in a lecture, you know, the rasa dance is talked about pretty much exclusively by many different, you know, personalities who try to make a living off of talking about the rasa dance a lot of times. He expressly was very much against that. And only after thorough understanding of the Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna's pastimes before the rasa dance, because that is in the 10th canto. We know in the Srimad Bhagavatam, when we start in the first canto, it's like looking at the toenails of Sri Krishna, and as we go up through the successive cantos in the Srimad Bhagavatam, you're going up little by little by little until in the 10th canto you're actually able to see the smiling face of the Lord. So he just cautions everyone, you know, again and again and again. I'm sure you've all heard that that's not something that's widely discussed, even in, a class. And also, it struck me because I was just sort of reading a little bit about it again, just to get some of the particulars. And actually, the rasa dance occurred when Krishna was 8 years old. And so he and the gopis were actually very, very young. So, I mean, those of you who have children or maybe just were 8 years old, which probably is a few of you, you kind of know that, 8 years old, that's not really a time when children are thinking of anything more than just, having a nice time or, just playing or enjoying. And the rasa dance kind of, to me, falls into that category. He called the, I'm just going to read it because it's better coming from Prabhupada's purport. When Krishna, the supreme enjoyer, desired to enjoy the company of the gopis on that full moon night of the Sharat season, which is tonight, exactly at that very moment the moon, the lord of the stars, appeared in the sky, displaying its most beautiful features. The full moon night of the Sharat season is the most beautiful night in the year. In the Indian city of Agra in Uttar Pradesh province, there is a great monument called the Taj Mahal, which is a tomb made of first-class marble. During the night of the full moon of the Sharat season, many foreigners go to see the moon, the beautiful reflections of the moon on the tomb. Thus, this full moon night is celebrated even today for its beauty. When the full moon rose in the east, it tinged everything with a reddish color. With the rising of the moon, the whole sky appeared smeared by red kumkum. When a husband, long separated from his wife, returns home, he decorates the face of his wife with red kumkum. This long-expected moonrise of the Sharat season was thus smearing the eastern sky. The appearance of the moon increased Krishna's desire to dance with the gopis. The forests were filled with fragrant flowers. The atmosphere was cooling and festive. And we've been actually reading about the Venu Gita this week in Srimad Bhagavatam, and how the forest is just so resplendent with so many natural resources for Krishna and the gopis and Lord Balaram. As we read yesterday, they were decorating themselves with many beautiful flowers and newly sprouted mango leaves, and just so many natural, things from the forest. And everything is just in overdrive at this point in time because the autumn rains have nourished everything, renourished everything, rejuvenated everything, and so it's very beautiful. It's a very beautiful scene. When Lord Krishna began to blow his flute, the gopis all over Vrindavan became enchanted. Their attraction to the vibration of the flute increased 1,000 times due to the rising full moon, the red horizon, the calm and cool atmosphere, and the blossoming flowers. All the gopis were by nature very much attracted to Krishna's beauty, and when they heard the vibration of his flute, they became apparently lustful to satisfy the senses of Krishna. So Krishna's beauty also has been being described, and the gopis were saying this week that what is the point of their eyes if they can't look at the Lord, they can't look at the beauty of the Lord. And that's how, that's what the sort of thing we must cultivate when we see the beautiful form of Sri Sri Radha Golokananda. How can you look away? I mean, they're ever fresh, and every single day it seems like they're getting more and more and more and more beautiful. So that's how the gopis felt all the time. They couldn't, they didn't want to be away from Krishna, not even for a second. They were cursing their eyelids. They were cursing Brahma because their eyelids were in the way of them looking at Krishna. So they wanted to go see Krishna, and they heard the flute, his beautiful song, which it said that when he plays the flute, it's like his enchanting, like all of his enchanting mellows and his voice and everything is actually being filtered through that flute. So it's even like a condensed version of the sweetness of Krishna. Immediately upon hearing the vibration of the flute, they all left their respective engagements and proceeded to the spot where Krishna was standing. While they ran back swiftly, very swiftly, their earrings swung back and forth. They all rushed toward the place known as Vamsi Bhat. Some of them were engaged in milking cows. Oh, thanks. It's tight. It's just loose. It's a loose thing. Some of them were engaged in milking cows, but then they left their milking business half finished and immediately went to Krishna. One of them had just collected milk and put it in a milk pan on the stove to boil, but she did not care whether the milk overboiled and spilled. She immediately left to go see Krishna. Some of them were breastfeeding their small babies, and some were engaged in distributing food to the members of their families. But they all left such engagements and immediately rushed toward the spot where Krishna was playing his flute. Some were engaged in serving their husbands, and some were themselves engaged in eating. But caring neither to serve their husbands nor eat, they immediately left. Some of them wanted to decorate their faces with cosmetic ointments and to dress themselves very nicely before going to Krishna. But unfortunately, they could not finish their cosmetic decorations or put on their clothes in the right way because of their anxiety to meet Krishna immediately. Their faces were decorated hurriedly, and they were haphazardly finished. Some even put the lower part of their clothes on the upper part of their bodies and the upper part on the lower part. Can you imagine them running and they're all disheveled? While all the gopis were hurriedly leaving their respective places, their husbands, brothers, and fathers were all struck with wonder to know where they were going. Being young girls, they were protected either by husbands, elder brothers, or fathers. All their guardians forbade them to go to Krishna, but they disregarded them. When a person becomes attracted by Krishna and is in full Krishna consciousness, he does not care for any worldly duties, even though very urgent. Krishna consciousness is so powerful that it gives everyone relief from all material activities. Srila Rupa Goswami has written a very nice verse wherein one gopi advises another. My dear friend, if you desire to enjoy the company of material society, friendship, and love, then please do not go to see that smiling boy Govinda, who is standing on the bank of the Jamuna and playing his flute, his lips brightened by the beams of the full moonlight. Srila Rupa Goswami indirectly instructs that one who has been captivated by the beautiful smiling face of Krishna has lost all attraction for material enjoyments. This is the test of advancement in Krishna consciousness. A person advancing in Krishna consciousness must lose interest in material activities and personal sense gratification. And actually, this month during Kartik, many devotees choose to perform different tapasya or maybe increase, chanting, increase reading, increase hearing, or maybe they try to make their lives a little more favorable and conducive so they can perform even more devotional service, or maybe they choose to try to enhance what they're doing in some way. I'm not sure what everybody's doing. Maybe we can share a little later, but I'm going to once and for all learn how to play the harmonium because I've been playing around with it for like 5 years. But little by little, just really the need to glorify the Lord. That's why, to sing the bhajans, to glorify the Lord. And that is the impetus that would drive me personally to try to perform, austerity, to help facilitate my service to the Lord. Some of the gopis were factually detained from going to Krishna by their husbands and were locked up by force within their rooms. Being unable to go to Krishna, they began to meditate upon his transcendental form by closing their eyes. They had already had the form of Krishna within their minds. They proved to be the greatest yogis. As is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, a person who is constantly thinking of Krishna within his heart with faith and love is considered to be the topmost of all yogis. Actually, a yogi concentrates his mind on the form of Lord Vishnu. That is real yoga. Krishna is the original form of all Vishnu tattvas. The gopis who could not personally go to Krishna began to meditate on him as perfect yogis. So that's an example that we can certainly take with us this Kartik, is to meditate no matter what we're doing, what state we're at, work, school, other engagements, to remember, that's actually the very first of the 9 processes of devotional service, is remembering Krishna. And even if you can't physically do anything or even speak at the time, if you just constantly remember Krishna in all circumstances, he's in the heart. He's Paramatma. He knows what you're thinking. No one else does, but he does. So you can remember him at all times, particularly during this month, and he will, of course, reciprocate with you because you're constantly in his association through that remembrance. So Kartik, we know, maybe some of us know the pastimes of Lord Damodar, but I was rereading it again, and actually Nikunja Vasini brought this beautiful book which expounds greatly on the pastimes of Lord Damodar. It's the Sri Damodar Janani, and I know she meditates on this book quite a lot because when I went to Mayapur she was begging me to find it for her, which proved to be unsuccessful, but then I believe Kamalini has some copies of this book, and it's a really nice meditation to actually read during this month. And it's about the pastime of Lord Krishna and Mother Yashoda when Mother Yashoda was trying to serve Krishna, but actually put him aside for a moment to tend to other duties. So actually Mother Yashoda was always thinking about Krishna. Actually, that's what mothers do. They're constantly thinking of their children all the time, and even their adopted children all the time, because it's kind of like just a little piece of their heart, when it's somebody that you've brought up and you've watched every single day, and you actually know what they look like from when they were a baby. And you just keep remembering that over and over and over. And even when they get bigger, they actually, still you see their little face. You still see their little face, and you always want to make sure that they're well taken care of, that they're loved, that they're served nicely. I experienced that a lot with Sri Radha Golokananda because fortunately their faces seemingly don't change, but they actually do. The longer you're in their association and you serve them, and you see sometimes they're getting a little chubby because they're, being fed nicely, and maybe their belts don't fit right, as they did 5 years ago, or, maybe their face just looks a little bit rounder. So, babies do change and they grow up, but, that's always something that a mother carries in the heart. So Mother Yashoda was constantly thinking about Krishna all the time. All the time. I mean, can you imagine having Krishna as your child? That's like, unfathomable. Obviously, she performed many, many austerities to get to that position. And in this particular pastime, Nanda Baba had, they were very, very, opulent. They were land rich, they were cow rich, they had very many opulences, not like we consider today in material life, but they had many opulences that, at the time and even now really would be, we would be very fortunate to have. But they had many cows, like hundreds and thousands of cows. And out of those hundreds and thousands of cows, 108 cows were sort of designated as special sort of milk cows. And then out of those 108 cows, there was 8 cows that just pastured on one particular area, in the land, in their land. And then out of those 8, there was 2 very special cows that ate only this special grass that Mother Yashoda herself cultivated, and she cultivated it with great care by actually milking the cows and having the milk on, like watering the grass with this milk, and just making sure the grass was the absolute sweetest grass that could be, grown specifically for these cows to eat. Then the cows could be milked, and it was extremely high quality. I mean, if you can imagine like a cream top milk, I imagine the cream was like this much and maybe there was this much milk. It was extremely creamy, rich, sweet milk that came from these cows. So one day when she had a quantity of this milk that she wanted to turn into butter for her beloved Krishna, she actually tasked her maidservants, who would normally do that task, she tasked them to do something else, and she decided to churn the milk herself, because it's a meditation when you're doing something for your beloved, obviously, when you're doing something for the Lord. And I can attest that growing flowers from seed and cultivating them to the point where they can be planted in the ground, and planting them in the ground, and then lovingly caring for them and watering them, and then they grow up into a plant, and then you can pick the flowers, and then they end up in the deity's garlands or in their turban, is a very, very gratifying activity. So that's just one instance, but obviously the topmost is Mother Jashoda with the milk. So she decided to churn this milk, and she was happily churning the milk and singing songs about Krishna, meditating on Krishna. You know, when you do any devotional service for Krishna, obviously that's who you should be thinking of, either your Guru Maharaj or Krishna, so you can actually, it's a devotion, it's a reciprocation when you're cooking or dressing or growing flowers or any service that you're doing, creating milk sweets for Krishna. So she was churning the milk and for butter, the cream into butter. And then Krishna sort of toddled up, he was a baby, and he was, tugging at her sari that he was hungry. So if you're a breastfeeding mother, of course, you set aside what you're doing and you take the baby and you breastfeed because, for one, obviously she was looking at the beautiful face of Krishna, and, if you're constantly breastfeeding your baby like you should on demand, then when you see your child, obviously you're just overflowing with love. So, the milk just comes. It's not like it's forced. So she was breastfeeding her child and, caressing him and singing to him like that. And there was a beautiful exchange when you're breastfeeding your baby. It's eye to eye contact, skin to skin. It's a very beautiful exchange. And just as a side note, it makes me really sad when I see so many kids, particularly in this country, who are not being breastfed so much, because it's just really a tragedy, especially if I'm in a store and I see the kid and he's in like a car seat. He's looking up at the lights of whatever Walmart, and the parent has a bottle in his mouth. It's just so impersonal, Is there any wonder that there's so many people in this country that are, not compassionate? No, they're not being given compassion from a very, very young age. So anyway, she was feeding Krishna, and, she had some milk on the stove boiling, presumably to make another wonderful preparation for the Lord, and she could hear it. You hear a sound where it's like boiling up to the top of the pan, and she didn't want it to boil over because it was a special milk, that she had done so much to cultivate this super sweet milk for Krishna. So she just quickly set Krishna aside and ran to take the milk off the fire, the pan off the fire, so it would stop boiling, it wouldn't boil over. So Krishna was not happy with that. And, I think most children are not happy when you're in that kind of a really loving exchange, and you have that kind of, interruption. So he got up and he found a rock, and he toddled over to where the storeroom where the butter was kept in clay pots, because, any extra milk at the time was always converted into more stable source, such as ghee or butter. So there was a stockpile of butter in a like a pantry, and he threw that rock at one of the clay pots and just started grabbing butter out of there and eating it, because he felt a little jilted and he was a little upset. And also at the same time he was feeding monkeys, which it's said that the monkeys are his friends from when he was performing pastimes in Ram Leela. So the monkeys were there, and he was, giving lots of butter to the monkeys, and they were having a grand old time. And Balaram somehow had appeared and joined in for some butter, so they were having fun. And then when Mother Jashoda came back from, fixing the pan and making sure everything was in order, she saw Krishna wasn't there, and she was looking around for him. And, that wasn't the first time that he had been doing those sort of antics. He was a little bit of a rascal boy. So she kind of knew where to look, and she was going over to see what was going on and calling from him, and had a stick, because even though, she would never do anything to harm Krishna, that's kind of a more of a threat to, somebody to comply when there's like some kind of external thing that they can see that's not like their normal, what they see from their mom. So, I never did that, but I can imagine that, that probably would help in some instances when the children are being so compliant. So then he had butter smeared all over the place, so he started running, and she was trying to catch him, and his little footprints were all buttery, and he was like running out, and she was running after him, but he's fast, he's young, he's a child, and she was she was a little slow, because she it says she has a thin waist, and she a large body is what it said. She has a thin waist and large body, so she was obviously slower than Krishna. And plus she had a sari and ornaments, but everything was sort of coming undone as she was trying to catch up with him. And at some point, Krishna allowed himself to be caught up with, because that was the reciprocation. Mother Yashoda was just, she wanted to catch him, and she knew he was doing mischief, and actually, on some level, she didn't want him to continue to do mischief, because even though it seems like it's all in good fun, I mean, I can say as a mother, there's like so many red flags in that scene. If he's breaking pots, if he's running around in the, with over broken clay pieces, could be lodged in his foot, or he's got buttery, he's got butter all over his feet. He could slip all over the place, or, there's just so many things. So it's a little bit of a fearful situation that, you don't want your baby to be harmed in any way, even, So it wasn't really, I mean, there was some, measure of being upset because of what was done, but it's also, and I'm sure many of you have heard from your parents about, doing something that might be harmful, but, you got chastised, but you weren't, you were chastised mainly because you scared the heck out of the mom, not because, you did something that was so terribly wrong. So finally, she caught up to Krishna, and Krishna was just, sort of standing there, and he was shaking, and he didn't know what to do, and he had all these sort of, if you've been to Vrindavan, all the kids wear kajal, they wear all kind of like eye ointments to help, which are somewhat medicinal, but if you cry or if you sweat at all, it all just starts to like melt and run down everywhere, and your whole eyes are black. So if you can imagine Krishna with his little, moon-like face, and his little hair, and it was probably like sweating, beads of sweat, and he was just sort of like scared that Mother Yashoda was going to catch up to him, and she had the stick, and oh my gosh, is she gonna beat me? What's she gonna do? And he wasn't really thinking he was doing anything wrong. He was just having his needs met, right? He was having his need for fun. He was having his need for, supposedly for milk. I mean, obviously that's just mundane, but he was just having fun. He was having fun, and he was reciprocating with Mother Yashoda, because this is such a fun, like, way to reciprocate. There's no spice in just a boring, compliant child, actually. I mean, I can attest when the children are, a little bit, they're doing like, I don't know, seemingly a little naughty or crazy or weird stunts. It's funny, it's interesting, it's maybe sometimes things aren't as safe as you would like, but thank God that nothing happened in that stunt. So Mother Yashoda was just continually relishing that like that naughtiness, that, that like rasa. It's just so attractive, especially when you're expecting it a little bit more from boys than girls, actually. I mean, she didn't, she had the boy that she was dealing with all the time. So there was just that really attractive rasa that she was relishing and Krishna was relishing. And when she finally did catch Krishna, she decided that for his own good, so he wouldn't get in any more mischief, and he'd be safe, and she could go about her business because she still had to churn that butter, and she had to get back to doing what she was doing for Krishna, that maybe he should be tied up. So, she grabbed a rope, of which there was many around, because they had ropes for tying cows, and they had ropes for different purposes. If you're living in the country like that, you have ropes for different purposes. And, it was a very silky, smooth, pleasant, it wasn't like what you would think of as a rope, but it was actually, a pleasant, comfortable rope, especially when you're tying cows. And she decided that she was going to tie him to a grinding mortar, and she was, attempting to tie. And meanwhile, the gopis had gathered because they saw all the fun. They knew Krishna's antics, and they relished those as well. So they were laughing the whole time when Mother Yashoda was chasing him, and Krishna was, running, and the whole scene was, very, very funny, very comical, and very sweet. So, they were laughing and watching, and they were watching Mother Yashoda try to tie Krishna up around the belly. Actually, Dhamma is belly, and Uddara is rope. So that's why he's called Damodara. So she was trying to tie him around the belly to a grinding mortar, into the smallest place in the grinding mortar, so he would be presumably safe, because grinding mortars are big, heavy pieces of wood. He wasn't going to sort of get loose from that, and nothing would, harm him from the far. It kind of acts like a bumper. So she was trying to tie him up, and every time she tried, even though the rope seemed exceedingly long, it kept appearing to be 2 fingers too short. And so she'd go and she'd put another rope on there, and then that was 2 fingers too short. And then the gopis started bringing also ropes from their house of different colors and sizes, because it was evident, his belly wasn't getting any bigger, and this rope somehow was just becoming, infinitely longer. But somehow she couldn't tie him up. She couldn't understand how, and she was perspiring, and flowers were falling out of her hair, and she was in sort of just a complete disarray, and it was wearing her down that she couldn't tie him up, but she still persisted. She was so determined to tie him up. She was really determined to have him in under her control, or have him in her grasp, or somehow somewhere where she could maintain some kind of control of him. And that's actually what we all kind of aspire for. She wasn't giving up. She wasn't giving up. She was so determined to actually get a hold of Krishna and tie him up and keep him under her thumb, And that's actually the perfection of anyone doing devotional service, is to try to perform devotional service to the degree that Krishna doesn't have any choice but to reciprocate with you. He's so kind and so loving, and I'll just say that I constantly pray to Srimati Radharani, since she's the one that recommends everyone to Krishna, to have Krishna, to please, that I would like to please Krishna. But Mother Yashoda, being an expansion, she always wants to please Krishna constantly, and she's always trying her best, just no matter what, she's not giving up. And finally, Krishna relented, and that can happen. That can happen for us if we're just staunch determination, and we just keep trying and trying and trying and trying. Everything that we desire, even if we don't know what it is, will manifest, because Krishna is so kind. He's so kind. He's looking and he's waiting for us to have that determination to be that person that really just wants to serve and wants to serve and wants to serve and wants to serve no matter what the circumstances are. And just like Mother Yashoda was just kept trying and bringing ropes, and people were bringing her ropes, and she was trying and tying, and she was all disheveled, and she didn't care. She was just trying her best to, bind Krishna to her, basically, to get him, bound to her. And that's how we should actually think when we're performing devotional service, especially during this month. This is our opportunity to, try to bind Krishna to us if we're really diligent and try to serve as much as we possibly can under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, who is the localized aspect of the Lord. So whatever he is telling us to do and whatever he wants us to do, no matter what we think we should be doing, that's what we have to do. We have to do what's being asked of us by our spiritual master, because he knows best how to please Krishna. We don't have any idea. We don't have any idea. What idea will we have? We're just here, and all we have to do is just, be willing. Be willing to be an instrument. Be willing to show up. Be willing to, serve Krishna, serve the Guru at all instances and any circumstances. Unless you're on your deathbed, and even then, you can still remember Krishna. Have to try to serve Krishna all the time in our thoughts and our words and our deeds during Kartik. It's the most important time of the year to do that. And it's the easiest to gain the favor of Krishna, because Radharani's also, this is her month. That's why they say it's her month, because she's there, she's waiting, she's actually watching even more. She's seeing who wants to serve my Krishna. She's inviting you, come on, serve him now. This is your time. This is your opportunity. So, if you can gain that favor of Srimati Radharani in that way, then she'll nicely say, okay, Krishna, please look at this person. They're serving you very nicely. All glories to Kartik Mas. Haribo. Yes, Radharani's place is the kitchen. That's right. Jai. Hare Krishna.